Long after the Battle of Cold Harbor is over with, African American men are paid to come out here to these fields and to dig up the bodies of Union soldiers that were hastily buried out on the field right after combat. There's a historic photo that shows a leg dangling over the side of a wheelbarrow, several skulls stacked together, and mangled corpses in uniforms laying all across the fields. Many people will never know the stories of how those men died or what they did in their last moments. So how is it that someone from the 69th New York eventually makes his way to the 164th New York, and so many people claim to know what he did in his last moments, but yet they weren't there to witness it? Well, today we're going to take you to that location here at Cold Harbor, and we're going to talk about that soldier and his brave moments just before he died. Welcome back to History with Waffles. This isn't your regular channel. We don't just tell you stories and run AI articles and spin a story here or there. We actually go to the places where the history actually happened. We take you to as many battlefields as possible, and we show you where these men sacrificed their lives. Today we're out at Cold Harbor, walking these fields, and we're going to try to see if we can get ourselves situated in a position where the 164th New York would have crossed these fields towards the 17th North Carolina. And there was an officer that's in charge of this unit who took the place of his brother. We'll tell you the story along the way about him here at Cold Harbor. This big patch of grass here right out front might not look like much, but in 1864 this would have been earthworks to protect Union soldiers out here at the Battle of Cold Harbor. Stretching across this field, however, if you look just on the other side there, you can see the parking lot where everybody parks and the visitors center and a couple of cannons out there. That battery placed over there is right around the same spot where the Confederate earthworks would have been across this field. This is the place where you can imagine the most, the empty stretch of land in between these earthworks. Now historically, there were a lot of wooded areas around here, but this entire area had seen so much combat before this fight that a lot of these areas were stripped. The woods had been chopped down. There had been a lot of desolation of the land, farms that had been torn up by the battle and by the things that raged around here from 1862 onward. So the men coming across this field, June 1st through the 3rd, knew what they were heading towards, and it was not looking very good for those Union soldiers. Out here on these fields, thousands would go down as casualties. James Power McMahon was Irish born. He was born in County Wexford in Ireland. and he would immigrate over here to New York, from all accounts, from what I've read. And when he gets over here, he folds right into society just like anybody else. And during the time of the American Civil War, he just happens to be a part of a militia. He ends up enlisting or becoming an officer with a militia that's out of New York. So this kind of puts him squarely in the position to be in charge of a unit. And he's in Company K of the 69th New York when the American Civil War kicks off. Now, out here in these woods, it may be kind of hard to see. But if you take a look out in front here, you can see these ridge lines, these bumps. This is potentially some of the earthworks that James McMahon might have come across when he was out here fighting during the Battle of Cold Harbor. The Confederates would have been placed in and around and behind earthworks just like these. The 17th North Carolina in particular was in a pretty good position whenever they came across the 17th North Carolina. On November 17th of 1861, there's a record of James joining the 69th at the age of 26. He's elected as the captain of Company K of the 69th and ends up taking over that section of the 69th. In 1862, he would end up becoming Marr's staff officer. So he was on the staff for General Marr, and he's part of that famed Irish Brigade. For 4 months, he would be assigned to them, and then he would become a provost marshal staff officer as well. So this is all leading up to the Battle of Antietam, and we all know what happens at the Battle of Antietam. I couldn't find a whole lot on James' past, on what his life was like before. I was trying to dig through records to see what all I could find, but I did find a grave site that had a few pictures of him posted. Plus, he's mentioned in a few books out there too, specifically about Antietam itself. It tells his story about his fight and his struggle there with the 69th coming across that field. But what was more telling about his story there, and for those of you that don't know, the 69th was charging across those fields with the Irish Brigade, and they were actually going over towards the sunken road and fighting in that area where Richardson went down. McMahon was part of that. His unit is mentioned in Hancock's report back, especially McMahon himself. He says that him and the other officers that were within that group fought heroically, that they were brave, and that they did the best that they could, essentially, after Richardson went down, and became part of the group of officers that was with Hancock out there on that field. So it's pretty important for any officer to be mentioned by the general in charge or the officers in charge when they file their reports about the battle, the after-action reports. So it's pretty telling of James, what he did there in Antietam, for him to be mentioned by Hancock, who himself was an extremely brave officer. And right now I'm walking down a farm lane, a historic farm lane that would have been here a long time ago at the Gaines Mill battlefield, the Watt House just directly behind me. And it has nothing to do with the story of James and the 69th New York, except for to show you the fencing. The old fence rails here behind me and the farm lane. The reason why I walk this lane is to tell you about what happened over at Antietam. At Antietam, the 69th makes a big name for themselves. Not necessarily because of the officers in charge, but by the heroism of the men that continued to charge the sunken lane. Now at Antietam, the 69th was supposed to be in a jointed effort going towards the West Woods, but instead they get segmented off, and somehow they end up being a part of the fight that's going over towards the sunken lane. At the sunken lane, the 69th charges again and again and again. They go across that field as far as they can, and though it is not successful in the way that they would hope, it does continue to buy time with bodies. Several men from the 69th end up with the Medal of Honor because they broke apart a fence, just like this one here. Separated it, moved it down, and allowed soldiers to be able to get over top. But when the Confederates started to get flanked, and that horrible call happened that made some of them think that they were supposed to retreat or leave their lines, that's when all hell broke loose there in Antietam, and the sunken road was taken. James is out there on that field. He's a part of that fight. He's leadership. He sees what's going on there. He's going to be a part of many different battles and see a lot of blood and carnage throughout his time in the American Civil War. And Antietam really is just the start of many, many times when he's going to see something like that happen. And he's going to continue to take part in it. He's going to continue to take leadership. And the further he goes, the higher in his leadership he will go. And he will end up being a colonel of the 164th. After the Battle of Antietam, he ends up earning a promotion in his discharge and then reinstated as the Lieutenant Colonel of 155th New York. And he's with that unit for probably about 5 months or so. And then again, he is discharged and he is reinstated as the Colonel of the 164th. Now that's a sad story. The 164th New York, which were Zouaves, Corcoran I believe is the name, his brother was in charge, and his brother ends up dying of disease, unfortunately, and it kind of opens up the position for him to take over. And naturally, James steps in and becomes their colonel, and he leads them pretty good. He's a good officer, very brave man too. Of course, this leads us to Cold Harbor eventually, but not before the Overland Campaign. There's many fights that these men are going to have to go through before they get here. This is just going to be the tip of the iceberg for the 164th. Now, if you've never been out here to Cold Harbor or the Richmond battlefields, Gaines Mill, where I'm at right now, is actually connected to the same section of battlefield where they would fight Cold Harbor. The Watt House, which is right over here, right there, is a private residence or a private home. And it is also positioned exactly where it would have been positioned during the American Civil War. It's a historic home. And this location here, just off in my front, not too far down the road, is the Confederate Earthworks facing in that direction for the Battle of Cold Harbor. And out in front of them, stretching all along that land, and some of this land over in the other distance there, where Bosun's Creek is, the Union soldiers are actually going to be coming towards me in this direction. They're never going to make it this far. And some of them don't even make it to the Confederate lines there at Cold Harbor. But James, on the other hand, does make it to the lines. Hancock would write about James's actions here at Cold Harbor. And he would say, he reached the enemy's works, planting with his own hand his regimental colors in the parapet, where he fell covered with wounds and expired in the enemy's hands, losing his colors with honor. Now, of course, this is a report that's being said about him many, many days after the battle is over with. And Hancock himself was not actually there to see what happened. The Battle of Cold Harbor really kicks off in earnest on June 1st, when the Union soldiers move into position, and we'll take you over there and show you that first day's battle here in just a second. But the fight that James goes through, his major portion happens on June 3rd. And we're going to go over to a Crossroads area where the Battlefield Trust has actually saved some land. I reached out to them trying to get some more information if I could, but it seems like they're a little too busy for a small-time creator at this moment in time. So we'll see what we can find out for ourselves and then try to bring that information to you. So out here we have a section of land that's been preserved by the National Park and the American Battlefield Trust. Because there's a lot of land over here that's been preserved by the Battlefield Trust, and some land out in this area here too. And then there's a parking spot over there where I have my car parked and a couple of signs. Well, this National Park sign here talks about the attack on the morning of June 1st, 1864, led by Kite. Colonel Lawrence M. Kite. He was a signer of the South Carolina Ordinance of Secession, and he plays a critical role here. His men would be attacking, the 20th South Carolina would be attacking, and they would join the fight and move from right to left as they're going towards the crossroads over here, which is what they're trying to secure and keep the U.S. cavalry from attacking and holding. They fail, and they fail pretty quickly within 5 minutes or so. One of the telling things on this sign is this quote here from Captain Augustus Dickert. And he says, "Every man in ranks knew that he was being led by one of the most gifted and gallant men at South, but every soldier felt and saw at a glance his inexperience and want of self-control." Basically, we have a person that has plussed themselves up in the ranks beyond their abilities. He's not really experienced at leading men into combat. He's out here with these men trying to lead them into combat against a very, very good enemy. Someone who's, the cavalry at this point is really getting good with the United States Army. And there's men back here behind breastworks, quickly made breastworks on June 1st that morning. And when he leads his South Carolinians in here, he basically leads them to slaughter. The attack is over with. They're not able to maintain or secure those crossroads. Which leads us to the fight that happens out here on June 1st of 1864 at Cold Harbor later in that evening when Ingram shows up with the 48th New York. I'm now coming up from a position where the 8th New York Heavy Artillery would have been going across this field directly in front of me, headed towards the Confederate Earthworks on June 3rd, 1864. Out here, there's a sign that talks about Porter and him dying on this field just as he reaches the enemy's work. Well, based on the maps that I've seen so far, if you look at the American Battlefield Trust map, it'll show you that they don't have it broken down as the 8th New York Heavy Artillery. They have it as 3 different names on that map. And we'll put that up on the screen here real quick, that section, to show you what I'm talking about. Now you can see the 3 names there off to the right-hand side. If you're looking at it from the Union position, right-hand side of 164th New York. 164th is the extreme left of that position there. I'll pull that back down. So here we are. We're in the position coming up from the woods here. There's water just down below there. So I'm assuming, according to Gordon C. Ray's book, he talks about the 164th crossing over water, possibly Bosun's Creek, to get to the 17th North Carolina. They would have been going through terrain near this position here, heading in that direction towards the 17th North Carolina, when they make their way all the way up to the earthworks there. And that's when James plants that flag and takes at least 6 bullets to his body, according to some of the things that I've read. But again, all the things that have been written about this man's death wasn't actually witnessed by the people writing it. Even the person that wrote the beautiful poem about him dying there and lying on the fields of Cold Harbor, that man didn't witness the death either, and didn't actually wipe the sweat from his brow or put water on his lips, as the poem says. It was just a fantastic poem about the death of a man who sacrificed his life here at Cold Harbor. Speaking of artillery, I'm in a wonderful place out here at Cold Harbor Battlefield. We actually get to see some of the artillery positions out here on this battlefield. It's directly behind me. It's a wonderful spot to actually stand and look at the earthworks that are out here and visualize where these men were about 500 yards away from the enemy with their artillery pieces aimed in the direction of the Cold Harbor Visitor Center that's out there today. It's definitely a great place to check out when you're walking this trail out here at Cold Harbor. Just down off in those woods there, I'm willing to bet down there at that low area, if we venture our way out there towards the copperhead snakes and all the ticks, that we will probably find that water tributary that crosses over where the 164th New York actually came across and made their way towards the Confederate earthworks over where the 17th North Carolina are. We might just have to make that trip. As promised, we're making our way down to Boatswain's Creek right now. Trying not to get sunken down into the dirt out here because it's a mucky place, but down there it is. In all of its murky glory, that is Boatswain's Creek. This is the water that the 164th New York is going to go across in order to go through the fields and straight on to where 17th North Carolina is. This is where James McMahon is going across towards his fate, really. 164th makes their way over there, and at some point in time during that fight, he ends up in the Confederate lines. Whether it's on top of the parapet or whether it's inside the lines, he ends up dying as a result of the combat over there. And again, the reports are 6 to 8 bullets, sometimes more, depending on who you ask about this. But this is another feature on the field that these soldiers are going to have to go across in order to fight the enemy on the other side. It's amazing battlefields out here. Now in this position, this very spot where I walk right now, 16th New Jersey was out here during Cold Harbor's battle, and a soldier had reported back that he had dug a grave for his comrade. And just as he starts to report it, he's hit by a sharpshooter. The man is killed instantly. And then in the writings, it was reported that they buried him in the same grave that he just dug. They widened it and it made it big enough for 2. That's a pretty amazing story, and it probably isn't unique to just this battlefield. It's probably happened time and time again throughout the American Civil War. So right now, I'm probably about as close as it gets to where the 164th New York was at. There's Union trenches out here in these woods right behind me, stretch all the way out back that way. During the 12 to 14 days that these soldiers were in and around this area at Cold Harbor, these trenches would become their home and their protection from the sharpshooters on the other side of that field. Likewise, for the Confederate soldiers that were out here too, they were well protected by their own trenches. This would become the new type of warfare going into the future, especially World War I. These trenches and this land is likely where 164th New York actually made their way across this field towards the 17th North Carolina on June 3rd, 1864. And that's when all hell broke loose. Some of the descriptions that I've read by people, again, that were not there to see it, said that the colonel hurried himself out in front of his line, and he was headed towards the Carolina men, and he gets up there towards the parapet, and he's out there by himself. All the other men are still behind. And as he gets to the top and plants his flag with one hand, he's then hit about 6 to 8 times with bullets from sharpshooters within the trenches there. Probably not a hard shot to make. And he's up on that first line of defense works, and that's when he's hit and killed. Some Confederate soldiers from Carolina described seeing an officer who was out in front of his lines, and that all of the other soldiers that were around him had already been killed. And he was out there by himself refusing to surrender, and then he was shot and killed before his body was taken by the Confederate soldiers, and he died behind their lines. According to what I read from Hancock, he died behind their lines. At either rate, it was a very heroic charge according to all that wrote about it, including the poem that was written about him. He made his way up in front of his men. He was not behind his men. He was not in the rear. He was with his men all the way. And just like he did at Antietam, he made his way to the front. This time, though, he was too far extended, and the soldiers around him couldn't help him. And he ends up dying here at Cold Harbor. A young man, really, at this battle. It's amazing to come out to a place like this and think about what happened in these woods, these fields around here at Cold Harbor, especially with the 69th New York and, well, here 164th New York, and the James Power McMahon. I hope I'm saying that man's name right, because if I'm not, please correct me, but I think it's McMahon or McMahon or something like that. I try to get the dialects correct whenever I say the Irish names. And I'm sure there's an Irishman out there that'll correct me, so you guys give me a hand. We're going to push off from here, and we're going to see if we can't get closer to the position where he was. If we can't get through these woods and get to a position closer to where he is, or was when he died, then we'll wrap this thing up here pretty soon, and we'll continue telling our story about Cold Harbor. So here I am out at the old Cold Harbor Crossroads. You can see the crossroads here as they intersect the old Ellison gas station or service station over there. And then this main road here that leads out towards the section where the 164th New York would have been. And if you look off in the distance there, that long wood line over there, we were over there a minute ago where the battalion was with the 8th New York. Now looking down on this sign here, from the American Battlefield Trust, they have that nice map that we showed earlier where it shows the battalions right here. All 3 of these. Well, the sun's kind of blocking it, isn't it? So the battalion's right here. The 164th is here at the very end, and they're going to push across the field to the 17th North Carolina. And this says we are right here. So this large gap in between is this wide open field, and then the woods that are directly ahead of us here, heading in that direction towards 17th North Carolina. And Colquitt's men are on the other side in that direction there. So it's a pretty unique perspective out here at the field. Now at the beginning we talked about also the dead men that were exhumed and the historic photo. And here is that photo depicted on this sign. We'll see if we can't get in tighter, because unfortunately for us history types, whenever we put photos like these in our videos on YouTube, YouTube loves to ban our videos and take them down. So we try to get historic photos in there any way that we can without getting that ban. Now earlier, like I said, no one who actually saw the man fall reported on the man falling. Hancock, who reported on the man falling, was actually back here towards the tavern watching the fight happen and unfold here. The failure, if you will, because let's not mince words. This assault was a failure on most fronts, and it happened again and again and again. This is where Grant earns that name, the Butcher. where he sends his men to the butcher. Grant himself is actually in the fields that I'm in right now with Hancock at some point in time, watching the fight unfold here. So this gives you a unique perspective. Hancock talks about the heroism of his men going to the top of the parapet and planting his flag. I don't know about you, but from where I'm standing now, looking that direction, even if the trees weren't here, I'm not sure I could see North Carolina's parapet. Well, it's been a great time out here telling these stories at Cold Harbor and covering some of the soldiers' lives that fought here and died here at Cold Harbor. If you made it this far in the video, then you probably like what you saw, and you stuck around long enough to see this message. So every time you click on this video, it adds a little more steam to it. There's also a thing called a hype button. So there are points that you get where you can hype my video there at the bottom, and it will actually help spread my video out to more people. Also, that thumbs up, it helps continue it. And every time you put a comment down there below in this video, it also helps to spread the video and continue the trend of it moving upwards, if you will. That puts gas in the tank. Not only does it spread this video out to more people so that they can see the story about the soldier, but it literally puts gas in my tank. So we don't do this for the clicks. We do this because we love telling these Civil War stories and getting out here on these fields. But the more people that can get exposed to these stories, the more, I guess, the bigger chance there is of them coming out here to these fields that you and I love so much and checking this stuff out for themselves. And if we don't get more people out here to see these places, eventually the desire to save them fades. We don't want that happening. So help us out. Let's spread the word about Cold Harbor. Couldn't think of a better place to end this video than right here in these woods where New York came across, heading in that direction, and where Stonewall Jackson himself was here in 1862 for the Battle of Gaines' Mill. Hope to see you out there in those fields sometime and around in the comments section. Till next time, this is History with Waffles from Cold Harbor.